Hello everyone, my name is Chris Morin. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be starting our three-part series that will review how to use my tool I've made called my scenario generator, which you can find by going to flightsim101.com and clicking Generate Scenario in the bottom right, or you can go to scenariogenerator.flightsim101.com and it'll take you straight there. What I've done is I've gone to that website, I generated a couple randomly, and I just hit print and I printed out my scenarios here. And this is what I will be going through today. This first part we're going to be going through the stuff on the ground, and then the second part is a lot of the in the air stuff, and the third part will be the emergency procedure followed by the landing. And the idea here is that we're going to be taking this about as seriously as we would in the real world. So the idea here is to make good use of our home flight simulator as close as we can to simulate what it's like flying in the real world and get actual practice that would be applicable to flying your airplane in real life, and ideally training towards something like your private pilot check ride. So that is what the scenario generator is really all about, is coming up with a lot of the things that you'll be expected to perform in your private pilot check ride. Now, quick reminder and disclaimer: one, I'm not a CFI. I'm just an enthusiast of flight sim, and I am a private pilot. But you can use the flight simulator to the best of your ability at home, but just remember that it's not the exact same as your real-world airplane. Ways you're working at a disadvantage in the flight simulator because you can't just look over your shoulder and see like the runway next to you. So sometimes it's harder to perform some maneuvers and easier to perform others in your flight simulator. So definitely not everything directly relates, but you can still practice the procedures, the memorization, and understanding how things fly with your virtual airplane. The same principles will apply in your real-world airplane, even if your real-world airplane might be a completely different airplane. The principles still apply. Learning them, practicing them, and memorizing those procedures that you'll do in the real world is still useful. So that's why we're doing this. This episode, we're going to be doing everything as close to the books as we can. That includes our pre-flight. So we can take a look outside of our airplane, and we want to do our pre-flight. So we're over here. We're at Charlie Ramp at my home airport, Hooks, in near Houston. And you want to be doing a visual inspection. We'll go through that here relatively quickly. In the real world, what I do is I approach the airplane. I walk up. I get inside. I turn on the battery master. I take a look at my fuel tanks, make sure I have fuel in both tanks. In this case, we have full in both tanks. I take a look at the hops meter and the tachometer, and I note them so that way I know how many hours I've flown and how many hours are accruing on the engine to document things for the aircraft logs, and if you're renting, the rental logs like I am. Then after that, I go ahead and extend my flaps fully, and then I turn on the lights that I expect to be using during this flight. Usually I just turn on all the lights and see if they're working. In the real world, I can just see in the hangar if the lights have turned on by looking at what lights are reflecting in the area around me, but in this case we'll look around. We see the strobes are on, we see that my landing light is on, and we see that the beacon is working. It's kind of hard to see in the flight sim, but in this case we can presume that we've checked and that they're working, right? So then I turn off all my lights, turn off the master switch, I keep the flaps down, and then I'll step outside of the aircraft and we'll do a walk around. So in my aircraft, we'll get out, we'll look at the hinges that hold the flaps together, making sure everything's okay. We look at the ailerons, we make sure that they move correctly and aren't stuck. We take a look at the lights, make sure that nothing's broken there. We take a look at the height that the wing is at to make sure that the struts haven't collapsed. We visually inspect the struts. We visually inspect the leading and trailing edge of the wing, all the rivets, things like that. We open the fuel tank and make sure that it has the right fuel in there. We sump under the wings and under the cowling when we get to the cowling. We check the air inlets, make sure they're clear. And then when we get to the cowling, open up the cowling, we check the oil. We make sure that that there's nothing unusual going on the cowling, that there's no frayed wires, that everything's connected, spark plugs look good, nothing weird is leaking. Ideally, it shouldn't be overly dirty. That would prevent you from inspecting everything in there. Give it a good once over, close it, check the prop, make sure nothing's broken, check the spinner, same thing. Go to the other side of the cowling, check, make sure we have brake fluid, make sure nothing's dripping, leaking, everything looks good and is in working condition. And then close the cowling, and then same thing for the other wing, sump the tanks, so on and so forth, follow all the way around until you get to the stabilator on the back. Make sure it can move. You don't check the rudder on a Piper Cherokee because it's tied to the nose wheel and you can't move one without the other. So just visually inspect everything, checking all the antennas, GPS, and anything, the pitot tube or the pitot mast in this case, static ports, making sure everything is good to go for the flight. So now we've completed our walk around. We can go ahead and pull out the airplane and we can start our before engine checklist. So what are we doing today? Well, today we are going to be flying up to Lake Conroe over here near Houston, and we're going to be doing a number of maneuvers, and then we're going to come back and land. So probably take about an hour, I would expect. So this will be 3 episodes, probably, I'm hoping for about 20 minutes each. Okay, and we're going to depart. We'll see what the weather is like, and we'll just leave whatever runway is currently active. And we're going to head up north. So now we know more or less what we're up to. Let's go ahead and go into our checklists and go into our before start checklist. So we've noted the Hobs and tachometer. Passenger briefing, there's no passengers today. Flaps, we can retract them now. Okay. Trim is neutral, seatbelts are fastened, avionics are off. Master alternator switch is on. Any collision lights we can turn on. Circuit breakers check. Carpet is off. Parking brake is set. Before start checklist complete. Engine start checklist. Parking brake is double checked, set. Fuel's on the fullest tank. They're both full. We'll go ahead and switch. Mixture rich. Prime as required. Don't really need to in a sim. Throttle open 1/4 inch. Fuel pump on. Clear our prop, clear prop, and engage the starter. All right, and now we want to make sure we hold the throttle just between 800 and 1200 RPM. Oil pressure, oil temperature all look good and are in the green. Oil temperature is rising. Engine instruments, they look good. Master start checklists. Avionics are coming on. Lights as required. We don't need to change anything on those right now. Radios we'll set here in a second. Transponder we're ignoring for this flight. I'm waiting to buy a physical transponder rather than fiddling with the one in the airplane. I like to have everything in front of me and not grab a mouse while I'm doing my flight sim stuff. It's just a personal preference. You could very easily just have a mouse next to you and do it that way. Next, you're leaning for taxi. We're going to keep it rich. Fuel pump off. And now we can get the ATIS. So the ATIS here is 128375.
Airport information, uniform 2000 Zulu. Wind 268 at tree. Visibility, niner. Sky condition, clear. Temperature, 15. Dew point, 1 tree. Altimeter 29.902. Visual runway tree 5 left and visual runway tree 5 right in use. Landing and departing runway tree 5 left and runway tree 5 right. VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact you have uniform.
Okay, we have uniform.
Oaks Airport information, uniform 2000.
Runway 8.4 is going to be tower, so I'm just going to stage this stuff here.
Visibility, niner. Sky condition, clear. Temperature, 15. Dew point, 1 tree. Altimeter.
And ground is 121.8. Okay. So, Go back to our checklist. We got our ATIS, we have information uniform. And we can go ahead and perform our run-up. So, parking brake is set, flight instruments, we can go ahead and look at these. So airspeed is set to nothing, blue over brown looks good, altimeter we've set to the barometric pressure, turn coordinator is level, the directional gyro is aligned with the magnetic compass, the VSI is reading 0. So our instruments look good. Mixture again we're keeping rich, can throttle up to 2000. Okay, magneto check. Good drop, about 75. Back to both. Identical drop on the right mag, back to both. Carb heat check. I don't have a button for that, but pull the carb heat, make sure it drops, bring it back up. Engine gauges are all looking good. Amp we can check by just throwing on the landing light and making sure it adjusts correctly. Retard the throttle back down, make sure it holds in idle, it doesn't die. Which it does. Throttle it back up a little bit. Magnetos are set to both, carb heat is off. Run up complete. Okay, so now what we can do is I'm going to simulate the calls to tower. This is a controlled airport in real life and in the sim. But I'm just going to do the calls myself. So I would say Hook's Tower, or Hook's Ground, Cherokee 1800 Tango is at Charlie Ramp, ready to taxi VFR departure to the north with uniform. And they would say Cherokee 1800 Tango, Hook's Ground, taxi to 35 left via Papa Echo Foxtrot. And I would say taxi to 35 left via Papa Echo Foxtrot, Cherokee 1800 Tango. And I would be good to go. I can turn off my parking brake. We can do a pretty hard turn over here to the left. And we can start heading on down to 35 left. And we're definitely going to run into that airplane in front of us. Oh, the joys of flight simulation. Oh, hey look, there's one of me. It's a little Cherokee right there. Make way, Cherokee. Bam. So much for realism. No, we're doing pretty good today. We're doing pretty good. So the instructions I gave myself was for 35 left to hotel. I'm booking it here. Was for 35 left at hotel. So we're going to be doing a hold short instruction. Did I say hotel? We're going to hotel because we don't.
Approaching runway 17 right.
Oh my goodness.
35 left.
Sorry, the iPad was the loudest thing on this earth right there. Okay, so we're going to 35 left at hotel. So it's a little bit of an intersection takeoff from the runway. That's fine. It's a 6,000 foot runway. We don't need all of it. So we're going to be taking off from there. And now's probably a good time to mention that we are doing a short field takeoff. So this is what was generated by my tool as far as what procedures we're going to fly. And so we're going to practice a short field technique. It says here, short field takeoff with short field technique, usually involving flaps, maintaining VX until over a 50-foot obstacle. So that's what we will do. Hotel is this next intersection. And then as we get over to this hold short line, what I like to do when I'm number one, before I even call, if I'm pretty sure I'm going to get out right away, is I like to do my before takeoff checklist just to make sure that we have it done. So I got my checklist before takeoff. Takeoff briefing. We're going to be taking off to the north, relatively long runway. If we have a problem on the runway, we're going to apply brakes, stop, exit when able if it's safe. Otherwise, we'll leave with the door. If we've rotated, but there's still runway remaining, which we probably would have for the first few hundred feet, we'll simply land back on the runway. If we're below pattern altitude, let's say below 1,000 feet, We need to land right in front of us. There's a freeway right in front of us. It's the best option for this particular environment. Otherwise, there's power lines and stuff you have to contend with, and mostly just trees. If we get up to pattern altitude, we can turn around and land back here at Hooks. That's takeoff briefing. Doors and windows are closed. Flight controls are free and correct. Fuel pump on. Fuel selector is the fullest tank. We'll go ahead and flip that over. Mixture is set. Transponder is set to altitude. Flaps. We do need 2 notches of flaps for our short fill work. Turn on our landing light. And clock will note automatically in for flight when we take off. So now we'll switch over to tower. And we will say Hooks Tower, Cherokee 1800 Tango, short of 35 left at hotel, ready for departure. And it would say Cherokee 1800 Tango, Hooks Tower, clear for takeoff, runway 35 left. Departure to the north approved. I would say clear for takeoff 35 left, Cherokee 1800 Tango. And so then away we go. And we can go ahead and start moving our booty up. So, short fill technique, even though this is an intersection
Approaching
takeoff,
runway 35 left.
so we
Entered
wouldn't
runway
normally
35 left.
do
5,900
like a short
feet
field at an
remaining.
intersection. You'd want to use the full length of it, but for the sake of testing, we will absolutely use the intersection. We have about 5,000 feet remaining, I believe. So, what we're going to do is apply our parking brake, and we're going to throttle up to full. Okay, full power is achieved. Parking brake off. Got some right rudder in to help keep us aligned here. Should be able to feel our start getting light right about now. And we want to climb out of VX, which is about 65. Until we're over the obstacle, which we are, so we can go ahead and nose over. Try and accelerate to get up to VY, which is a little over 70. And we can go ahead and drop a notch of flaps. We've still got a good rate of climb. Drop our second notch of flaps. Everything is looking good. Back to our after takeoff checklist. Flaps are up. We'll turn off our fuel pump once we get to past pattern altitude. Okay. So pretty easy since it's just a straight out departure. There's pattern altitude, so we'll turn our landing light off, fuel pump off, our flaps are up. After takeoff checklist is complete. We go up to 1500. We're going to keep on going north until we hit the lake. And there's a Class Bravo shelf that we're like hiding underneath here, which is why we're stopping here at 1500. And while we're heading that way, I'm going to throw in cruise, fuel pump cruise checklist. Fuel pump is off, cruise power. And bring it back to 2300. Make sure we stay rich at this level in the real world. MI airplane. And fuel tanks we just monitor. So now we have a timer telling us when we need to change fuel tanks. And that's it. So that's the end of part 1. Hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Catch me in part 2. It should also already be up. We'll be doing all of the maneuvers next. See you then.